I can't think of one thing that I haven't done.
Would you say you're uninhibited?
I'm pretty uninhibited,
I would
yeah.
guess you are. In all aspects of your life?
Well, I mean...
If you only have 30 seconds, here's the bottom line of this video. There's a particular kind of magic that happens when someone refuses to be the person the world handed them at birth, and instead becomes deliberately the person they saw when they closed their eyes. Most of us catch glimpses of that other self, in a mirror, maybe, in the way a certain dress falls, in the way old Hollywood films make everything look like it was dipped in honey and gasoline. Most of us glimpse it, and then we don't let it take over. We go back to our jeans and our ponytails and our appropriate regular faces, and we tell ourselves that glamour is for other people, people who were born with it, people who got lucky, people made from different clay. Dita Von Teese did not let it go. She grabbed that vision with both manicured hands, laced it into a corset, painted its lips the exact shade of vintage Revlon red, and turned it into the most successful burlesque career in history. And here's what makes her interesting. Not just beautiful, not just famous, but genuinely, philosophically interesting. She was never the girl you'd pick out of a crowd. She'll tell you that herself. I'm a dishwater blonde from Farmington, Michigan, she said. And I was never glamorous. But I made people believe that I was. That sentence, sit with it for a moment, is one of the most radical things a woman in the beauty industry has ever uttered. Because what she's really saying is, glamour is not a gift, it's a craft, and anyone can learn it.
Welcome. I'm Kira, and this is your beauty blueprint.
Let's go back, way back, before the rhinestones and the martini glasses and the Vivienne Westwood wedding gown that now lives in the Victoria and Albert Museum. Before the sold-out shows at the London Palladium and the Folies Bergère and the Crazy Horse in Paris. Before Playboy, before Manson, before the perfume line and the lingerie empire and the French aristocrat boyfriend and the New York Times bestseller. Before all of it, there was Heather Renée Sweet, born September 28, 1972 in Rochester, Michigan. Middle daughter of 3. Father was a machinist, mother was a manicurist. The family moved to West Branch, a small farming town that she'd later describe as a universe away from the colored Klieg lights of Hollywood and Paris. She was painfully shy, so shy that her parents sent her to speech classes because she simply did not like to talk. Imagine that, the woman who would one day command stages in 40 countries, who'd speak at the Oxford Student Union alongside names like the Dalai Lama and Anna Wintour, was once a child terrified of being called on in class. But something was happening in those quiet years, something was taking root. She'd sit with her mother watching 40s movies, Betty Grable, Mae West, Carmen Miranda, Marlene Dietrich, and she noticed something crucial, something that would become the philosophical foundation of everything she'd ever built. She noticed that they were all painted, constructed, assembled from artifice and intention. It wasn't the real thing. I realized I could make that, she recalled. And there it is. The founding epiphany. Not, I wish I looked like that, which is what most of us think when we watch old movies. But I could make that. The difference between those two thoughts is the difference between admiration and agency, between wanting and becoming. The becoming happened in stages, and each one is a little delicious. She trained in classical ballet, danced solo for a local company at 13, cleaned bathrooms at the studio in exchange for lessons. She was never going to be a professional dancer, and she knew it, but ballet gave her something invaluable, the understanding that a body is an instrument. How you hold your spine tells a story. She got that. Years later, she'd go en pointe during burlesque performances, and audiences would gasp, not quite understanding why this tease felt different from every other. It was the ballet. It was always the ballet. When her father's job relocated the family to Orange County, California, she was about 13, and everything cracked open. Her parents divorced. At 15, she took a job at a lingerie store, and that's when the fascination with intimate apparel became something close to an obsession. She spent her entire paycheck on lingerie. Always hand-washed each piece, by the way. Her father kicked her out of the house over it, which is both heartbreaking and a little bit funny, because he couldn't understand that this teenage girl buying silk wasn't even trying to date boys. Not at all. She was learning how fabric holds a body. She was doing research. At 18, she got a beauty mark tattooed on her left cheek. She'd actually wanted a star, but the tattoo parlor refused, so she settled for the dot and accidentally gave herself the signature that would become one of the most recognized beauty marks in modern culture. At 19, she stripped for the first time at a bikini club. The other dancers wore as little as possible. Customers told her she wore too many clothes. She looked around at the other strippers. The sameness of them, the lack of story, and thought, I can do this differently. She studied historic costuming in college. She worked the Shiseido and Ultima 2 makeup counters. She dyed her naturally blonde hair black after seeing Sherilyn Fenn's December 1990 Playboy pictorial. And somewhere in the middle of all this, the ballet and the lingerie and the vintage obsession and the makeup counters, Heather Renee's suite started dissolving and Dita Von Teese began to crystallize. The name itself is a love letter to the obscure. Dita was a tribute to Dita Parlo, a German actress who bridged the silent and early sound eras. Most people have never heard of her, which is precisely the point. Von Teese happened by accident. Playboy needed a surname for her December 2002 cover. She picked Von Teese from the phone book because the Von prefix sounded exotic and the magazine misspelled it. She kept the typo. There's something deeply Dita about that, taking an accident and making it intentional. Now, the art, because that's what it is, despite every critic who's ever tried to reduce it to mere titillation. Dita Von Teese didn't just revive burlesque, she made it mean something again. She took an art form that had been dead since the 60s, dusted off its feathers, covered them in 250,000 Swarovski crystals, and made it the hottest ticket in town. Her most famous act is the giant martini glass, roughly 4 feet tall, in which she performs a tease while bathing. She developed it with her creative partner Catherine Delish in the early 2000s, and it appeared in Marilyn Manson's Mob Scene music video in 2003. She's had about 5 different martini and champagne glasses over the years, constantly reinventing the act, because she understands something that most performers don't. Repetition without evolution is death. The other acts read like entries in a fever dream catalog. A crystal carousel horse, an opium den, a giant powder compact, a bird cage, a clawfoot bathtub, a pink crystallized bowl, a swan fountain, something called the Black Swan, and another called Bird of Paradise. Each one is an entire world. Each one takes titanic preparation. In October 2006, she became the first ever guest star at the Crazy Horse Cabaret in Paris, a venue that had existed since 50s without ever once inviting an outsider onto its stage. She's been back multiple times since, of course. She sold out the London Palladium for 5 nights, the Folies Bergère, the Berg Theatre in Vienna. Her touring show, The Art of the Tease, has been called the most successful burlesque tour of all time. Her current Las Vegas residency at the Venetian has been extended through 2026, and she's simultaneously touring Europe with a new show called Nocturnelle. And then there's the empire beyond the stage. She launched her own perfume line with fragrances called things like Erotique and Scandalwood and Flirties. She built a lingerie brand with a trademark detail, garter belts with 6 garters instead of the usual 4, because she knew from years at that lingerie counter, from decades of dressing and undressing for a living, that 6 hold the stockings better. 6 are just better. She also designed for Wonderbra. She was the face of MAC's campaign, with every cent going to AIDS charities. She became Cointro's global ambassador. She walked for Jean-Paul Gaultier's, including his final couture show in January 2020, and for Moschino and Giambattista Valli. She landed on Vanity Fair's International Best Dressed list twice. She wore one of the first fully articulated 3D printed gowns ever made, covered in 12,000 Swarovski crystals. And here's the part that makes the whole thing extraordinary. She does it all herself. She is her own producer, choreographer, creative director, costume designer, hairstylist, and makeup artist. No glam squad, no overlord. Just Dita, and 3 decades of knowing exactly who she wants to be. Which brings us to the beauty, and this is where it gets genuinely fascinating, because Dita Von Teese thinks about beauty the way a philosopher thinks about truth. It's not vanity for her, it's epistemology. It's a question about what's real, what's constructed, and whether the distinction even matters. Her everyday look, sunscreen, face powder, red lipstick, hair twisted into a chignon, takes under 10 minutes, believe it or not. Full glamour for events takes an hour, maybe an hour and a half. Show preparation, 3 hours. She does her own hair dye. She transfers modern lipstick into vintage tubes. She collects at flea markets, because the ritual matters as much as the result. And then there's the skin. That porcelain complexion, the kind that makes her look like she wandered out of a Vermeer painting and into a Hollywood cocktail party, is entirely deliberate. In a culture that worships the sun-kissed and the bronzed, Dita Von Teese chose pale instead. Not because she couldn't tan, because she understood that pallor, in the right context, is its own form of drama. Staying pale takes some effort in Los Angeles, she said, and there's an understatement for you. In a city where everyone is perpetually golden, where the sun is practically a civic religion, she spends much of the day indoors, slathers on sunscreen, MDS Solar Sciences is her brand of choice, and wears hats with the kind of commitment most people reserve for their political convictions. Her skincare routine is meticulous but not excessive. Eminence Organics products, Rajcevich eye concentrate, and a non-negotiable rule that she has never once, not once, been too tired or too drunk to take off her makeup before bed. She starts mornings with lemon water, vitamins, face wash, and moisturizer. The skin is the canvas. You don't neglect the canvas. The pallor serves a purpose beyond aesthetics, though. It's a declaration of independence from the mainstream beauty industrial complex. When she looks at the cover of Sports Illustrated's swimsuit issue, she sees a woman who looks like she has no makeup on. She has a tan. She's perfect. It's God-given natural beauty. And she pushes back against that entire paradigm. Her argument, and it really is an argument with evidence and logic and conviction, is that we've been told natural beauty is the only legitimate kind. That if you wear too much makeup, it's fake. But Dita's whole career is a counter-thesis. Artifice and construction are not deception. They're creative expression. They are beauty. The young Marilyn Monroe, she points out, was a pretty girl in a sea of pretty girls. Then she had her hair bleached, fake eyelashes applied, and became extraordinary. That is when she became extraordinary, not in spite of the construction, but because of it. This is why her book, Your Beauty Mark, The Ultimate Guide to Eccentric Glamour, hit the New York Times bestseller list. It wasn't just a beauty manual. It was a manifesto. Cat eyes and red lips, she insists, look beautiful on every ethnicity. The trick is not to chase what's trendy, but to find what makes you, personally, memorable. People who follow all the rules and chase every trend are easily forgotten. They look great, but they're not as memorable. And then there's her most liberating piece of beauty advice, which I think ought to be stitched onto throw pillows in every dressing room in the world. I make a point to never ever point out my physical flaws. People don't notice the things we see in ourselves that we hate, so why direct them to it? Perfect. She has worn corsets since she was 18 years old. Her corset maker is the legendary Mr. Pearl. At her smallest, she is laced to a 16-inch waist. On stage, she typically wears 19 inches. When the Kardashians sparked a waist training trend, she had words. It's like the blind leading the blind. People that actually know a lot about corsetry are not the ones that are publicly speaking about it.
Burlesque traditionally in the 30s and 40s was entertainment geared toward men, but now what you have in the neo-burlesque movement is women that are becoming inspired by the art of creation and the confidence that they find in seeing a burlesque show or performing a burlesque show. We're not afraid anymore of really owning our sensuality.
Her home is a 1927 English Tudor in the Hollywood Hills, 3,200 square feet of maximalist madness that sounds like it was decorated by a Victorian eccentric who won the lottery and lost all restraint. Ethical taxidermy everywhere. Swans in the entrance hall, a tiger wearing a tiara in the living room, Victorian-era birds under glass domes, a stuffed bunny in a tailcoat. She hates white walls. The color palette runs to emerald, sapphire, and tourmaline. She also owns a 20s log cabin in the mountains and has turned her pool house into an intimate English pub. She drives a 1939 Packard, a 1946 Ford Super Deluxe, a 1956 Whittle convertible, and a 1965 Jaguar S-Type. She does Pilates every day, practices dressage and fencing. She had a Devonshire Rex cat named Aleister, after Aleister Crowley, naturally, given to her by Marilyn Manson around 2003. The cat was nicknamed the Bat for his grey, wrinkly skin and enormous ears. He traveled the world in a Louis Vuitton carrier with Dita's monogram, received acupuncture at the vet, and amassed over 120,000 Instagram followers before he died in May 2020 at the age of 17. "My heart is broken," she wrote then. The love life, in her case, reads like a screenplay. She married Marilyn Manson in 2005 at a castle in County Tipperary in Ireland, in a ceremony officiated by the surrealist filmmaker Alejandro Jodorowsky. She wore a royal purple silk taffeta gown by Vivienne Westwood, a tri-cornered hat by Stephen Jones, a Mr. Pearl corset, and Christian Louboutin shoes. Vogue ran the headline, "The Bride Wore Purple," but a year later, on Christmas Eve, she moved out. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, though she's been more candid since. Drug abuse and infidelity. Let's just say that it must have been something pretty bad for me to move out of the house after 6 years together and to pack up my stuff on Christmas Eve.
You were married to Marilyn Manson. Was he okay with you being a burlesque dancer?
Oh yeah, I mean, he was super encouraging, and you know, we did a lot of, like, you know, there was a lot of crossover in our careers, and he encouraged all my eccentricities. He did a whole album that was, you know, kind of burlesque themed, and we made, like, you know, music videos together, and I can speak fondly about him now because it's like, I mean, if you would have asked me like 4 years ago, I'd have been like, shut it down, I can't talk about it, but we're friends now.
Since then, she's been quietly partnered with Adam Rajcevich, a graphic designer, since around 2014. On the subject of remarriage, I had a big, obnoxious wedding and an obnoxious divorce, and don't feel the need to do it again. She speaks instead about perpetual engagement, and honestly, as a concept, it might be more romantic than any wedding. On children, she quotes Oprah as her North Star. Oprah Winfrey didn't have children. I keep going back to that fact. Her daily rituals are almost as curated as her stage shows. She follows what she calls a vegan before 6 p.m. philosophy, plant-based during the day for energy, allowing meat at dinner. Mornings begin with lemon water and a green smoothie that's 70% greens, 30% fruit. She travels with a Vitamix blender, which is the kind of detail that makes you realize how seriously she takes the infrastructure of self-care. She loves avocados, mushrooms, arugula, exotic spices like cardamom and smoked sea salt. Her indulgences are human-sized, a good taco, an In-N-Out burger, French bread, croissants, dark chocolate. She does not drink coffee. I practice good habits in my everyday life. Nothing's a real shock to my body, she says. But she does drink champagne, specifically half a glass of the easiest, bubbliest, sharpest champagne before every show. There's nothing that can light your spark like it, she says. And who are we to argue? Her cocktail of choice is a margarita, fresh lime juice, silver tequila, and Cointreau on ice. No salt, no negotiations. She was Cointreau's global ambassador for 6 years and created a signature cocktail called the Margarita, which is both a terrible pun and a perfect drink. Her favorite restaurant is Musso and Frank's in Hollywood, the perfect time capsule restaurant with the best martini in the city. The feminism question, because it always comes up, is where Dita is at her most compelling. Her answer isn't ideological, it's practical. Being a feminist means choosing to live your life however you want, she told Dua Lipa on her podcast. We get to decide if we want to be objectified, but I recognize that one person's empowerment can be another person's degradation. That nuance, the willingness to hold two truths at once, is rare in public discourse and practically extinct in the beauty and fashion industries. She doesn't claim burlesque is superior to any other kind of stripping. She credits the strip club as where she really learned about what it is to be sensual and how to do it in a way that looks effortless. She had boundaries from the start. At 14 or 15, a man tried to wrestle her to the floor while she was working at that lingerie store, and she pushed him off and chased him out. Even when I was a bondage model in the 90s, I had big-time boundaries. People used to say I wasn't very fun. She says that last part with a grin, and you can hear it. The pleasure of being underestimated, and then proving everyone wrong. She argues the golden age of burlesque is now, not the 40s. We have a very empowered community which has become a place to celebrate different bodies and skin colors in politics. There are trans performers and people who are really challenging the stereotypes. In the 40s, she points out, she would have had to quit by 30. Today, at 53, she's selling out arenas. 80% of her audience is female. On aging, she is magnificent. During the COVID lockdown, she let her natural hair grow out and saw the silver coming in. Her response was not panic, it was delight. Okay, Silver Fox, great. Carmen Delorafis, the legendary model who worked into her 90s, once pulled her aside and told her she was doing exactly the right thing, and told her to stay true to herself and not listen to what anyone else ever tells about how to change with age. She took the advice. My ass doesn't look like maybe when I was 24, but there's other things about me that are getting better, she once said. When you ask her about aging in the beauty industry, her response is practically a manifesto. What's wrong with not caring about looking younger? And maybe that's the heart of it, the reason Dita Von Teese matters beyond the sequins and the Swarowski and the sold-out marquees. She took the most radical position available in a culture obsessed with youth and effortlessness. She chose effort. She chose visible, unashamed, meticulously applied effort. She chose to be constructed rather than natural. She chose pale skin in a city that worships bronze. She chose corsets in an era of athleisure. She chose vintage in a world addicted to the new. And then she turned those choices into an empire, a philosophy, and for the millions of women who see themselves in her story, a permission slip, because that's what Heather Renée Sweet really built when she became Dita Von Teese. Not just a career, not just a brand, but an artwork, an argument that glamour belongs to anyone willing to learn it. That beauty is not a thing you're born with, but a thing you make. That the gap between who you are and who you want to be is actually a canvas. And all you need is the right shade of red, a steady hand, and the nerve to paint on. You can be the ripest, juiciest peach in the world, she once said, and there's still going to be somebody who hates peaches. So be the peach, be the whole damn orchard. Just make sure you do whatever you do the way you yourself find interesting, alluring, with a martini in one hand and a philosophy in the other. That's the Dita way. And, darling, it works. I've queued up the next chapter for you here. I'll see you soon. Love, Kira. Now go create your own blueprint.